In today's video, I'm going to explain or talk about the 5 mistakes that I made while beginning art that cost me a lot of time and what I'm actively doing to solve those. I'm going to try to explain this before my tea gets cold, so stick to the end to see whether I succeed in that or not. So, the first thing that I feel is a big thing when it comes to the first mistake that I made was not studying fundamentals. Now, the fundamentals of art are, construction, gesture, form, anatomy, color, values, etc. So I'm going to go through them, step by step, as to what I'm doing to fix them so that I don't fall into the same trap again. So we start with construction. So hopefully, I think I hit record. So right now, what you'll be seeing is a drawing of a guy that I drew, just no construction, no guidelines whatsoever. And then right next to him is another guy, but drawn right below him is another guy, but drawn with guidelines and construction, just some form of construction. Of course, it's not perfect by any means, but it's something. So this is no construction whatsoever, and I mean, it's pretty easy to tell. And this one has some form of construction, and after practicing this again, these fundamentals of construction, so knowing the landmarks of the face, and all that, I've come to a point where I'm able to create relatively decent portraits out of that. As you can see here, this is a portrait that I drew the other day, and it was using again the core fundamentals. So when it comes to construction, of course, you have an oval of sorts for the head, and then there's other guidelines that you follow to be able to construct the rest of the face. In general, all I'm saying is that there are certain guidelines that you follow to be able to get to a point in which your art does not look planless anymore. Now, moving on to the next thing is gesture. Now, gesture is extremely important. It helps give a sense of direction, especially when you're drawing characters. And since I hope to be a character designer, this is one of the mistakes that I made. I never studied this at all. In fact, it's a recent thing for me that I've started studying very hard, and this is an example of what my gestures used to look like. And they're not bad, but this is when I started. This is just for example. But then right now, after much practice, I've been able to get to a point where they have some form of direction, and you're able to plot how things move, the balance between the imbalance between the hips and the shoulders and things like that when you're doing gesture drawing. Also, that's one thing that I'm doing to build a habit of gesture, observing from life and being able to capture it as simply as I possibly can. Next thing is perspective. Now, perspective is extremely important, and it's again another core fundamental of art. And with perspective, it's giving depth to things. And I feel like one of the ways that I'm channeling that feeling of perspective is by practicing landscapes. So if you've been following me on Instagram, you know that I do landscapes once a week. I try to do one landscape a week to get better at it, but I feel like it has helped me with a greater understanding of perspective and giving a sense of depth where the subject is placed, like this tree, for example, where it's placed compared to the rest of the image gives you a sense of, okay, if I was in this scene, this is how it would feel like, so to speak, if that makes sense. And then moving on swiftly, we have form. Now, form is relatively similar to construction, but I feel like for me it's more building things out of fundamental shapes. So, boxes and circles and cylinders, cubes, and the rest. And I feel like one way that I'd like to illustrate this is by taking this illustration of Daffy Duck that I did the other day and just being able to see certain shapes. Like if you look at his head, it's technically an oval of sorts, and then if you look at his beak, it's and if you look at his neck, it's either it can either be a rectangle or a cylinder, and that's just a way of breaking it down. I didn't draw it like that, but when I was thinking about it, these were some of the things that were in my mind to be able to make it make sense while I was drawing it. And then another thing is values. Now, values are something that I'm still yet to study. A little disclaimer that I probably should have mentioned at the beginning is these are things that I'm actively studying. I've not mastered any of them whatsoever, but I feel like it's just, again, this is my public art channel, so I feel like I should share it. So values is basically lights and darks. When we're talking about art, lights and darks are extremely important, knowing where your light source is coming from, what your shadows are, and I feel like grayscale painting or drawing grayscale or having a good understanding of values is a good way to get there. So for example, we can take this drawing that I did. I put a color layer on top to make it black and white, and we can see, if you scroll, all this, if it were to be in grayscale, makes sense in terms of the value. You can feel like the moon is actually casting a light, even if it's in black and white, and that's what's important about values. And the last fundamental of art, at least based on what I've seen, is color. The importance of color, understanding color theory is still something that I'm yet to dive into heavily, like headstrong, but I feel like it's again very important. Right here I have an orange and a blue. I picked this not only because it was my favorite colors, but because they're complementary colors. They're colors that just make sense together and happen to be found on the opposite side of the hue spectrum based on my understanding. Yeah. So now, then another thing, lastly, is anatomy. Now this one was pretty big, because once you learn form and gesture, you have to put muscles on top of that form and gesture, and that's one of the mistakes that I made. I didn't. So one thing that I'm doing to combat that is just intentionally taking time to practice anatomy, whether it's hands, whether it's torsos and the such. Taking time to practice these things is what's helping me grow and develop in my daily practice. So mistake number 2, that was like mistake number 1. It has taken too long, but anyway, mistake number 2 is drawing too soon from my imagination, and connected to mistake number 3, which is not using references. So here what I have is, I tried drawing a humpback whale from imagination. So I went with a top view because, again, I was going off my head. Eventually what I did is I drew the same thing, but now with a reference, and this is what I got. And it looks like a humpback whale. I mean, you can tell it's a humpback whale, and that's basically sums up the main mistakes that I made, while at least drawing related mistakes that I made when I was beginning art, and how I dealt with them. And yeah, so the other things are not necessarily heavily related to drawing as a whole, but I feel like one mistake that I made constantly, and it's something that we fall into as artists, and that's comparing myself too much to other artists. And I found myself scrolling on social media and seeing artists that I admire and feeling bad because I'm not able to replicate their styles that soon. This is like days after picking up a pencil and paper 2 years ago. And you think to yourself, well, does that really make sense? No, it doesn't. But at the time, you're like, I wish I could be like this. Why am I not like this? And stuff like that. And that came with consequences, and the consequence is the 5th and last mistake that I made, which was a lack of consistency and accountability. And that's the bonus step, accountability. So the consistency part, there's sometimes where I'd say, okay, I'm going to draw today. I draw, grind like 5 hours worth of sketches that looked lackluster, and that led to lack of accountability. And the inconsistency was, I draw like that, and then I don't draw again for 3 months. and then I come back to it and then I don't draw again for 2 weeks. And it wasn't necessarily, like I don't have motivation. It was burnout. Like, why aren't I not good at these things? And again, that relates to mistakes that I've talked about. It's because I've not studied the fundamentals. I've not studied from reference. I'm drawing from my imagination. And how do I expect to learn if I don't even know what to learn, and if that information is not in my mental library? So accountability. Accountability is the only part where I succeeded, so to speak, because I started this YouTube channel around the time that I did so, although I wasn't posting as often. But there was a relative form of accountability here and on Instagram, where I was like, okay, this is where I am now. People comment, give critique, and then that's when the light bulb clicked. There's some things that I should be learning right now that I've not started learning yet. And again, last thing, don't be too hard on yourself. Art is your journey, your personal journey, and it's something that only you can breathe life into. We have mentors, we have people that we look up to, but at the end of the day, it's up to us to take that chance and put in the work and put in the practice. And the way to deal with the accountability and the procrastination of your art is to set small daily habits. Right now, I'm trying to build a daily habit of drawing a subject every week and working on that subject daily throughout the week. So like, for example, next week we'll be heavily focused on drawing clothing, for example. So I'm going to learn about tension points and the different kinds of cloth and fabric and how to do all that, and I'm going to make sure my daily practice is structured around that. So this video has gone on longer than I wanted it to, and this is the 7th take of this video. But it is what it is. That's what YouTube is. It's not perfect, and I feel like it's the imperfection of things like these that brings a sense of authenticity. But anyway, that's it from me. I don't know if any of the tips that I mentioned related to you or not, but either way, I'm thankful to anyone who watched this video. Very, very grateful that you're here. Feel free to comment and subscribe, as it really, really helps the channel out. And I'm very grateful to all the new subscribers that I've had over the last 9 days. And yeah, so that's it from me. And my tea is still hot, so I've not taken as long as I thought. So I will see you guys next time. Take care.